Well, hello! Hey, Purple Ella here and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk to you about autism and pregnancy. So my children, if you have been watching my channel for a while, you'd probably already know, are aged 10, 8 and 6. So I've been through pregnancy 3 times, but it was quite some time ago now. So the reason that I'm sharing my experiences, the best that I can do is share my personal experiences as an autistic woman who's been through pregnancy, in hopes that anyone who is currently newly pregnant or maybe considering getting pregnant and is on the autistic spectrum might want to do some research. I don't know, we kind of like to research generally, and might want to know what the experience was like for someone else on the spectrum. So obviously my individual experience is not necessarily going to be your individual experience, but it might be helpful. So in that case, that's the reason that I'm sharing it. So my first child, Super Kid, was obviously born nearly 11 years ago now. So he was my first pregnancy. And we had been trying to get pregnant with him for quite a long time, for around 3 years before I actually became pregnant. So it was a very much anticipated moment, getting that that positive pregnancy test, because actually I had seen a lot prior to this. I had seen a lot of negative pregnancy tests, and I couldn't really ever comprehend that one day I might actually see one that was positive. So when I did the pregnancy test and found that I was pregnant with Super Kid, I was absolutely ecstatic, so excited. I'd become, I would say, I went from having, as a young child and a teenager and even a young adult, not really feeling particularly bothered about having children, and in fact not really being entirely convinced that I wanted to have children or that I could cope with having children. You know, to be honest, I struggled so much with looking after myself that I wasn't sure that I was capable of looking after a whole other person as well. So although I knew that I wanted to be in a relationship, I wasn't sure I wanted children. My partner very much wanted children, but never put any pressure on me at all. But eventually I sort of came around to the idea and we started trying. But because it took so long, by the time I got pregnant, I had become entirely fixated on becoming pregnant. I had read every piece of information that I could get my hands on how to get pregnant, how to achieve a healthy pregnancy. We had tried so many things because I had just been obsessively researching, and it had reached the point where basically it was the only thing that I could think about. I'd been through that period of, we'd been trying for a long time, and my friends would announce that they were pregnant, and I would find that entirely devastating, because maybe they'd only just started trying. Or I really remember one particular incident. My husband and I had kind of gone for a walk to try and have a nice time and forget about what we were going through, and a friend of his rang up and announced that he had just gotten someone pregnant who he didn't really even know, but that they were happy and that they were going to have the baby. And I was devastated. I cried and screamed in these woodlands, and just it was all that I could think about. I know that probably sounds incredibly selfish, but it was all that I could think about, was sort of the injustice of the fact that I thought that we were going to do our very best to be good parents, but we didn't seem to be being blessed with a child, and when other people were, and I just couldn't understand it. And I found it, that period of time, incredibly stressful and heartbreaking and difficult. And my total heartfelt sympathy and understanding goes out to anybody who might be in a similar situation, because I know how hard that can be. But eventually I did get pregnant. Yay! So I remember doing the positive pregnancy test first thing in the morning, and just running and telling my partner, and he was just equally excited, and we were both really excited. And what is the first thing that the autistic girl wants to do when she finds out she is pregnant? Get some books, research, right? Research. So literally the first thing that we did that morning was go to a bookshop and buy as many books as we could find about pregnancy, and I read them all cover to cover several times. So that is the one thing that I would say I found incredibly reassuring during pregnancy, was to just get my hands on as much information as I could about pregnancy, about new babies. To be honest, I didn't focus that much on the new baby in the early days because I was newly pregnant, but later in the pregnancy, about new babies, and how to care for them, and just like research so that I could feel confident that I knew what was happening, I knew what to expect, I knew what was likely to come next, and that helped me to manage my anxiety around it and to cope with it. I have to say, I took the pregnancy rules very, very seriously because I'm autistic and because they are rules and because this was really important to me. I followed every single guidance, including giving up my favourite food in the whole world, which is sushi. I actually think you can eat sushi now that I've done a bit more research, as long as it's been frozen beforehand. That's not medical advice, that's just me spouting. But at the time, gave all the foods up, was really careful, didn't lift anything, like probably took it way above. I was probably like the most precious new mom ever, like newly pregnant woman ever about this whole thing, because I just didn't want to get anything wrong. I was really, really lucky with my pregnancies in that I had relatively healthy pregnancies. I had some mild morning sickness. I had some pain around, because when I got bigger, my ribs expanded in a way that was causing some kind of pain. So I had some pain around here for a fair chunk of the pregnancy, and in one of my pregnancies I had some of that where your pelvis just gets a little bit too loose, but it was never a serious case of any of those things. So I was generally pretty healthy. And I should also say that the hormones of pregnancy clearly agreed with me, because when I was pregnant, my anxiety levels, don't get me wrong, I was more anxious than your average person. I think I probably always will be, but my anxiety levels were so much lower and I was so much more stable than I had been at any other time previous to my pregnancy. So pregnancy really agreed with me, and I was lucky to be one of the glowing pregnant women. So, if you're not in that situation, you have my full sympathy, and I do feel like I was really lucky in that respect. However, I did struggle with some aspects of pregnancy, possibly because of my autism. The first one being, obviously, the obvious thing that happens as you go along with being pregnant is weight gain. You are growing another person. However, like many autistic women, I had previously struggled with an eating disorder, and I found that watching the scales creeping up really difficult to deal with. And I found my changing shape, having spent so long trying to disappear essentially with my eating disorder and not take up too much space, taking up huge, and I was massive. I was one of those, I was lucky. You'd see me from behind, you wouldn't necessarily know I was pregnant, and then I would turn around and it'd be like when a ship turns around. I'd be like, oh, and by the end of the pregnancy, I was as wide as I am tall, basically. So that change in shape and that like occupying space, I guess, aspect of changing shape was something that I struggled with initially, and I sort of found it difficult to let go and enjoy, eating lots of nutritious healthy foods for the baby, because I'd been so accustomed to really restricting what I ate. And even though I'd recovered from the eating disorder, I was still quite disciplined and structured in the way that I ate. So I found that quite difficult, but I decided that this was the one occasion that I could allow myself to eat, because it wasn't about me, it was about someone else. And so I did try and let go of that. I'm not going to say it was easy to deal with, but I did try and let go of that, and I did allow myself to eat what I needed to eat. The thing that was marvelous about the change in shape that I loved was bring on the elasticated waists. I really struggle with my sensory sensitivities and clothing. My absolute favourite clothes to be in are either jogging bottoms or pyjamas, basically. I find all other clothes, any clothes that are tight, any clothes that are itchy, find them really difficult. So getting complete license to bring on the elasticated waist was just heaven. I had the most lush pair of maternity jeans that I got from, I got a lot of my maternity clothing from a company called Jojo Mum and Baby. I think they're still around, and they did really lovely pregnancy clothes that I really liked. And I had like some really nice jeans, and I had some really nice stripy tops with like loads of room in them, and I had some really nice jumpers, and I had a little denim skirt. I may have overdone it on the maternity clothing, but when you've waited so long to get pregnant, you just go for it. You don't really care. So that was wonderful. Towards the end of my pregnancy, everything had gone well, all the scans had been good, we knew that we were having a boy, you know, everything had really gone very, very well during the pregnancy. We decided to take a little holiday, a little pre-baby holiday. So this was sort of late September, and I ended up having Superkid in the January. So I was kind of 5-6 months pregnant, so definitely showing, but not at the stage where walking around was uncomfortable. So we went to Paris, and this is kind of a funny story. So, like, you know, yeah, you go to Paris, you're pregnant, you're going to come back with something for your baby, most likely. No, I went mental, like entirely mental. I bought so much baby stuff in Paris that we had to go and buy an entire other full-size suitcase to fit the things that I bought in. I bought cuddly toys, I bought clothes, because the French baby clothes are so lush, and they were loads of like little stripy onesies and just lovely. And I went mental, like it was quite mental. I mean, bless Mr. Purple for allowing me and indulging me on this mega shopping spree for our son. He didn't at all object to what my wanting to go for it and buying those clothes, and he let me go for it. And yeah, so he was a really well-dressed baby. I bought clothes literally up to about age 2. 5-6 months pregnant, I was buying clothes for a 2-year-old. Yes, that is a little bit crazy, but you know, I enjoyed it, I embraced it, and I enjoyed it. Now, moving on to the part of pregnancy that I found really, really difficult. I'm talking about the last few weeks of pregnancy. Now, I had diligently attended pregnancy yoga. I had diligently attended 2 different sets of antenatal classes, my local NHS ones, and I also did NCT antenatal classes. I had written the most detailed birth plan that probably, if I saw my birth plan now, I would probably laugh my head off. I had worked with a doula. I had a doula, worked with a doula who was lovely, and if she's watching, hello. Worked with a doula. Basically anything that I could do to be in control of the birth experience, I grabbed hold of with both hands, and I had genuinely convinced myself that if the birth that I wanted was totally achievable if I worked hard enough. So I was basically planning a water birth with, you know, gentle music, water birth, low stimulation, all really, really good ideas, especially from an autism point of view. Wonderful. It was going to be a wonderful, wonderful, life-affirming, life-changing experience. My husband and my doula were going to be there supporting each other, supporting me. It was going to be the textbook perfect natural birth experience. And if I did enough chanting and enough downward facing dogs, I was definitely going to achieve this birth. Now, Superkid was due to be born on the 1st of January. So, okay, I thought, that's fine. 1st of January came, 1st of January went, and I was still very much pregnant. 10th of January came, 10th of January left, I was still very much pregnant. By this point, I had started to feel quite frustrated because my midwives had started making noises about induction, and I knew that if I was induced, that was my water birth out of the window. I was going to be on monitoring, I was going to be in the more medicalised part of the hospital, and that would be the end of what I thought was going to be the only thing that could help me cope with birth and labour. So I refused induction, but I did agree to go in, I think it was daily or maybe every other day, to be monitored basically. So what they can do is they can scan you and they can check what the sort of worrying thing about pregnancies going on for too long potentially is that the waters can reduce, and you know that's really bad for the baby. And I'm sure there's other medical things. I'm not going to claim to be in any way medically trained or get into that, but basically what they did was they scanned me every day, and I was lucky enough to be working with an amazing consultant who was absolutely brilliant and really supportive of my plans. The 15th of January came and went. The 20th of January, now bear in mind he was due on the 1st, the 20th of January came and went. And by this point I was doing everything. I was doing any remedy I could find on the internet to get this baby out. I was eating pineapple I went for a curry and scared the hell out of some curry waiters who literally looked like they thought I might give birth there and then. I went for a massive long walk on Weston-super-Mare Beach. I drank raspberry leaf tea until it was coming out of my eyeballs. I drank so much of it. I was doing everything and no baby was coming, and there was not even any sign that a baby was imminent, and I was getting more and more stressed and becoming more and more irrational and weeping and having meltdowns, and I just found that so incredibly stressful. Eventually I went in for monitoring and the water in my wombs had actually begun to reduce, and because I knew that that was a risk factor for my son and I would never have put him in any danger, I agreed to be induced, and that's ultimately what happened. And I'm going to do a separate video about my birth experience, and that will have several different birth experiences because each birth of each baby was a very different experience. So I'm taking you as far as that point, but basically I went into labour, into be induced with my son, kind of knowing that that was the end of the plan that I had. So I think my takeaway kind of message for this is that I know that if you're autistic and you're pregnant and you're planning a pregnancy, you are going to want to feel in control of the situation, and you are going to be writing very detailed birth plans. And I would have to say to you, I'm afraid, just don't go there, because ultimately my experience is that you can do things to tip this balance more in favour of the kind of birth that you want. Yes, yoga will be helpful. Yes, staying active will be helpful. But ultimately, your baby is going to come how it's going to come, and there's not really a huge amount that you can do about that. So I would say that one thing that I did with subsequent pregnancies, and that was really useful and really helpful, was didn't get attached to the idea of any particular kind of birth. Left that in the hands of God, in my case, being a Christian, but if you like, fate. And that was much less stressful because I wasn't like completely panicking that that I needed to be in control of this, and I was kind of just, you know, surrendering. I guess surrendering is a good word. So I would say that from my experience, if you take one thing away from this video, it is that when you are at that point where you are planning the birth and you are thinking about how you would like it to be, have ideas, but don't get overly attached to them, because if you can be more chilled about what's going to happen, it's going to be much less stressful in the run up to that, especially if you end up going overdue, especially if you end up needing to be induced. So, but one thing I will say that would be reassuring, I would hope, is that even though my birth experience with Superkid was in no way, looked nothing like what I had planned, it was, and in many ways was an incredibly traumatic experience, it was also one of the most wonderful days of my life, because my son was born, and that's a really powerful day and powerful moment, and you become a mother, and it doesn't matter how he came out, and now he's in my life, and now he's nearly 11, and he has brought me so much joy that the pregnancy, the morning sickness, the tiredness, the labour and the stress are all a distant memory in what has been a joyous experience of being a mother. So yeah, sorry to get a little bit overly emotional there, but I guess it makes me feel emotional. Anyway, I'm aware this is a particularly long video, so I'm going to wrap that up there. Perhaps there's more you want to ask me about pregnancy. If there are specifics you want to ask me about pregnancy, do leave me a comment in the box below, and I'll do my very best to answer your questions thoroughly. If you have found the video useful and you think it might be useful, share it on your prenatal groups, share it with other autistic women. Also, like the video, and as always, please do subscribe to my channel, because I love that. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye!